I'm here with Sarah and Lucy, who are both colleagues of mine here at Newson Health, and we're going to have a little chat about yoga. So Lucy Holtom is a yoga practitioner, and we are lucky enough to have a yoga studio in our clinic, which is a fabulous space, and we have various different yoga practitioners coming in, and it's a big part of what we do here. And Sarah Baker is our practice manager, and she has an extremely busy and stressful life trying to organise us all. And one of the big perks of working here is that as our founder, Louise, is such a big fan of yoga herself, she's very keen to also offer it to her employees. And so Sarah and I were both lucky enough to do a yoga course here earlier in the year. And so we want to try and sort of talk about yoga from both the practitioner point of view and also from people that have done yoga, but also trying to tie all that in with the menopause, which essentially is what we're here to help women with. So what I thought we might do, if that's okay, and to try and answer some of the questions that we've had coming in from the public, is to talk a bit about the benefits of yoga and why we talk about it a lot when we're talking about the menopause. Of course, it's important at all points in life, but at the menopause time, it can be really helpful. Talk about why it can be so helpful and the various benefits, and also a little bit about the different types, and a bit about sort of the sort of the muscles and the joints and the breathing and that sort of thing. So I just wonder if it might be helpful, Lucy, if you want to kick us off with sort of a really broad overview of kind of why yoga is beneficial.
So, like you said, yoga is beneficial for anybody and everybody that wants to try it, because there's so many different types of practices, whether it's, like you said, with the body or with the breath, or in even doing relaxation, can be helpful for anybody. But for menopause in particular, there isn't one type of yoga to suit somebody that's menopausal. There's so many different types. Obviously, different women have different symptoms. So, for example, when I teach here, I teach one lady and she comes to do Ashtanga Yoga with me and finds it's the most beneficial thing for her to do at the moment. She comes here, she's a patient here, she's on HRT. Whereas I have a group of other women that wouldn't be able to stand doing Ashtanga Yoga because it's quite a strong practice, and they come really to come and settle, to breathe, to learn relaxation techniques. A lot of ladies suffer with anxiety and insomnia, so there's quite a lot of variety of different breathing practices and relaxation practices that I share, which they're all yoga practices. So it's quite difficult to focus it on one thing to say that this works for everyone, because it's like anything. There's not one universal thing for like yoga practice for everybody, but it's worth trying different types to see what works.
So you and I did Ashtanga Yoga, didn't we?
We did.
And that was a 12-week course. What do you remember getting out of it?
Well, I think it's two-pronged, really. I mean, my sort of feelings about yoga was that it was all about sort of relaxing, and it wasn't really, it wasn't cardiovascular, it wasn't going to get me fit. But doing Ashtanga was really quite hard, and you worked every part of your body, but also incorporated in one lesson is the relaxation, is the quietening of your mind and finding a bit of space. And it is interesting what you say, because what I've learned about the menopause being here is that it is so multi-layered, so multifaceted, that not one menopause is the same as another. So, you can draw out of a yoga class what you need. So the using all my muscles being physical was great. I really enjoyed that. And it was a real surprise to me. But equally, the quietening of your mind and your breathing and, just zoning out for a bit, stepping off that busy world, was amazing.
So I remember feeling, because I'm quite a sort of an aerobic exercise, that's why I will normally go for a run or do some spin and get up a real sweat and the heart rate's going, and that's what I've always understood from my point of view was beneficial exercise for me. So for me, actually, yoga to me sounded like, why would I do that? What, where's the calories being burned? What's to me, that doesn't appeal to me. But actually, and I had done a half a yoga course years and years ago, and that really was feeling like I was lying around, and I always fell asleep, which is, I guess, is a good thing, but probably felt like I was slightly wasting my money. But then coming to do Ashtanga Yoga, yes, it was so much more. It wasn't like about strength, and I discovered that actually I have no balance to speak of, and so that's really important, because actually as we get older and we get menopausal, we don't want to fall over and break something, and we're far less likely to do that with yoga. And actually, yes, you can really get up a sweat. You know, as you said, there's so many different types of yoga. You can do really aerobic, and there's these hot yoga things, aren't there, where you really sweat. But it's a workout.
You can do more than one type of yoga at the same time.
Well, there's loads of different types. Ashtanga is just one. I mean, because we do Ashtanga here, and I have a lady that comes, like who I was talking about before. But there's a majority of women aren't here to work up a sweat for their yoga when they're perimenopausal, menopausal. I think a lot of them are already sweating quite a lot. Yes. So they want to find tools to help manage a lot of these symptoms. And of course, having HRT and other types of medication or things that work for them is really good and really valuable. And what I try to offer in a yoga practice is maybe some tools that they can use for themselves, maybe to empower them slightly and give them a feeling of a bit of control over what's going on. Because obviously when they're getting all these symptoms that they haven't got control over, that, you know, a bit disempowering and quite at a loss. So a lot of the well woman practices that I teach are focused on balance, on concentration, very simple tools that they can do in a session with me, but then maybe choose to take one or two of those things home. So they're not just coming to a class once a week, right, I've done that, I've done the yoga, that's what I'm supposed to do. It's actually about implementing tools into their day-to-day life to help them cope with things. Yeah. So when people get these waves of anxiety and they say, I don't know what to do with it, okay, well, let's try a breathing practice. Yeah. Let's try a hand placement. See what that does for you. And then maybe when you get these feelings again, see if that works for you. So it's just trial and error, and something might work for a while, and then things change, and then they need to try something else. And then obviously the well woman practices are a bit softer that I teach, but I do teach sun salutations with them then, within those, if people want to do it, because obviously some people get quite angry and have a lot of energy and they need to rid it and channel it somewhere. Okay, put it into a yoga practice. How are you going to work and release that? How can you find that? So it's just always about trying to find this. It's a bit of a balancing game, really, and just directing it in different ways.
I think again, it's a bit like giving good healthcare in general, but good menopause care is about the individual, isn't it? And actually, there's a lot of exercise where if you go to, you know, a spin class, that is the class. You either do it or you don't do it. Yeah. Whereas with yoga, especially with a very good practitioner like yourself, some women can be doing one thing in the class and another woman's doing slightly different things, and you get very different things out of it. And
definitely.
And I don't know how you found, but I also found that, okay, there's 45 minutes where this is about you. You're not working. You haven't got to rush around after the kids. This is about you, and yes, physically you're getting some exercise, but actually you're getting that brain space, aren't you? And that relaxation and meditation.
I think it's very much about the headspace, ultimately. Yeah.
You have to get over the fact you're in Lycra, though, and that you're with the women in Lycra. That bothered me for a little bit.
Yeah,
you move on.
Like, we can wear baggy trousers are fine as well, Sarah. You come to my class in baggy clothes if you like. And then we get to have a blanket at the end as well in mine. Eye bags, you get everything. Bolsters, all the nice things to feel supported and relaxed. Yeah. So.
Yes, I suppose that's another element. It's a sort of a gift to yourself as well, isn't it?
It is. I mean, you try. The idea is, I mean, yoga. Yeah, there are types of yoga. You get this physical, sweaty practice, and there's types of yoga where it's the complete opposite. It can be. It's a lot about release work, and I know we're going to come to talk about joints and things shortly, but there's within a yoga practice when you're working quite deeply, and in my classes they're quite small and intimate. So I kind of use myself more as a guide. I kind of share practices, and people can take them or leave them, or use them how they like. And within that, it's about them coming just to release and kind of go, this is my time. You don't have to think of anything else. Just leave it outside the door for now. Come into a place in yourself, see where you're at, and work with that. And that's okay. And if people cry, then they cry, and that's okay. Because actually, you're in a group with a group of women all going through something. No one's coming in like hunky-dory, everything's fine with me. Everyone has something. So everyone's always willing to listen. And what's really nice about these groups, because they're small as well, is that there's always a conversation that comes up between the women, and it becomes quite a support network. So it's not just a yoga class, you sit, you do your exercise and you go. It's a little bit more connection than that between the women, which that's where a lot of the practice comes as well.
And so we know, don't we, that estrogen that we have up until our menopause is great for our joints. It's like an anti-inflammatory, and it helps our bone density and our flexibility, really. And then we lose that at the menopause, and we may or may not replace that with HRT. But of course, yoga plays a massive part in helping our joints, doesn't it? So what do you think?
So you can do like the things like down dog and things that we've done that you know about, where and you can bear weight on your arms. But again, sometimes the stronger practices, women will come in, they're just too tired, they might not be sleeping, they're too exhausted to do anything like that. So in the Well Woman classes that I teach, we do a lot of joint release practices. They're taken from a lineage of yoga where you coordinate breath with really gentle movement. So I've just done it in the demonstration when we've just been filming downstairs, and you can do a whole body practice where you're literally rotating. I'm doing this with my wrist because there's a lot of joint release work where you're just rotating and breathing and flexing and releasing from the neck all the way down to the toes. And you just, when people practice, they're really immersed, just working, coordinating a breath with a movement. And visualising at the same time that you're either oiling those joints or that you're seeking to release those areas can just start to give a sense of lightness, and actually can make you feel a little bit more awake. Because obviously when you've got these aching joints and stiffness, the stress of that can make you more stiff and grit more. And then we just try and release that in the practice and start finding release in the joints.
And I think women who have been going through the menopause for a long time and not really noticed, because it can be quite insipid, can't it? You know, your estrogen levels are dropping off slowly, that these things are creeping up on them. And it's not until you start trying to loosen those joints and you think, actually, really sore and stuff. And this has probably been going on for a long time. So it's, you know, it's an excellent compliment, presumably, to re-estrogenizing yourself, to, you know, reducing the inflammation in those joints and being able to release them with something like yoga.
Definitely. But you know, there's so many different practices. I teach a few of, you know, different types of yoga, but I think there's a lot of yoga teachers out there teaching all sorts. So if someone was suffering with certain symptoms and they tried one class and that's not for them, they can, the teacher, if they're really honest, and they'll say, look, you know, what I'm teaching might not serve your needs. Let me find someone that I can recommend that can. And that's kind of that's how you get really involved, and you can really get somebody to help you. And again, it's to really kind of give yourself a bit of empowerment in that and help heal yourself, so you're not always depending on someone else. You can take a little bit into yourself.
Can you tell us a bit more about the breathing thing? Because that sometimes the first time we were in a class, we were having to do these sort of Darth Vader sounds, weren't we? And it was a bit odd, but actually it's fine after a while, isn't it? But
I've just been talking about this now while filming. So the breathing practice you're talking about is Ujjayi breath.
That's the one.
Which means victorious breath, and it sounds like a gentle Darth Vader. So I teach it like that, or I say on a more romantic level, it can sound like someone fast asleep next to you before they start snoring. So it's quite so it's a throaty breath, and it's almost like if you imagine doing an internal yawn. So you close, you keep the mouth closed, and you go to yawn, but you inhale into the throat. So it's not a sniff. That's going to sound delightful on that. So you can try it now. And when I teach it that you open your mouth at first, so it's like a sound. But eventually, and with practice, some people get this straight away. Some people like me, it took me about 6 months before I really understood what they were talking about. The idea behind this breath is that it soothes the nervous system. So straight away, you're coming into a place where you're working with the breath, you're experiencing the breath, and most people don't even think about their breath. So just that thought at first, it's like, well, I'm just breathing, that's just what happens. Well, actually, you can play and work with the breath to make it benefit your needs. So when you come into work in Ujjayi breath, it starts to soothe the breath, and the sound of it, the quality, the Darth-like quality, can often just kind of calm those thoughts that we have all day long. So you can start drifting away into the sound and working with the breath, and already then you're coming into a sort of meditative practice by itself, because you're just letting everything else calm and move away from you. So also you can play with this breath. So for example, in Ashtanga, you do it at quite a nice steady pace, and it's like kind of, it fires you up a little bit, and it helps you do kind of breath counts in Ashtanga to hold the posture. Whereas when in a Well Woman practice, we use that breath because it can be quite soporific. It can calm you down if you slow it down. And when you're working with joint release practices, you're really coming into a place of relaxation without telling yourself, I need to relax, I need to relax. You're entering into that state already. And that's what a Nudya breath, I think, when I play with it quite a lot in different ways. It's useful for childbirth as well. I mean, you can use it for so much.
And breath is so, when you're anxious, your breath becomes very shallow, your breathing becomes very shallow. It's so linked, isn't it, with our, psychologically and, as you say, nervous system. But I mean, I think breath is used in a lot of practices outside of yoga for movement,
absolutely,
for release movements. And,
it helps with coordination. So
it's
there's people just teach breathing on its own. You could just work with breath, and you don't actually need to do anything else, and you'd feel very satisfied afterwards. But there are different other breaths that people will teach, like a cooling breath where you move your tongue in a certain posture and you breathe in that way. So sometimes that's used for women for hot sweats. They might invite that breath to come in, and it's a cooling breath. Works for some, not for others, like anything. So that's really interesting too. There's there's lots of practice.
Yeah. And I guess the other thing that we haven't really touched on yet is that the with the Ashtanga Yoga we had I can't remember the name, and you'll tell me, we had to hold ourselves in a certain way, didn't we? So we were sort of the banders. Was it banders?
Yeah, the banders.
Holding in your abdomen, but also your pelvic floor, and that's really important, isn't it?
Again, we work a lot with the pelvic floor in Well Woman. So in Ashtanga, ideally, you're supposed to hold those locks all the time, which is really difficult.
Of course we did. Yes, we did.
I still do.
You are hardcore students. So in Well Woman, you don't have to hold it all the time. You're just working to try and sometimes re-engage and find that lock, and just try and exercise it just like another muscle. So the bandha means locks, and when we talk about mula bandha, it means root lock. And that's where you draw, in a woman, you draw your vaginal walls together and up towards the cervix, and you imagine like you're holding there. So it's not like a pulling and grip the tooth, everything. It's you're trying to exercise, gently bringing in that muscle and holding, and gently exhaling to release it.
So does that,
or you might work it with the breath.
With your symptoms that older ladies get in terms of
so helping with our continence,
everything like that. I mean, and also, but the thing is with that, you have to be quite careful when you work with the mula bandha, because it can bring up quite a lot of emotions in women, depending on their experience and things that they're going through. So as a teacher, you're quite gentle when you work with the mula bandha for women going through perimenopause and menopause. But it is a great muscle to work with, obviously, for women.
Very important.
And it's massive, and it's hard, and it can be quite difficult. So you just have to be really sensitive and take your time with it.
Yeah, brilliant. So, I mean, I think hopefully we've sort of covered the fact that actually there's lots of benefits from yoga. There's the physical benefits, our bones and our joints, and we're doing it's a weight-bearing exercise, so we're increasing our bone density while doing it. And with the breathing and the meditation, we're getting the sort of the psychological benefits and the relaxation. And also you've got the social aspects that, although it's an individual practice, you're within a group, and so you are meeting other people and coming together and having that feeling that you're not on your own, and that other women were on this journey together. So so that's why the yoga is such a crucial thing in the menopause.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you very much.
Thank you.